Are you ready to become your next best self and move from having the kind of energy that infects people in a negative way to having the kind of energy that affects them in a positive way? Well, today we're speaking to Dr. Patricia Muragami on becoming your next best self. This is She Means Business. I am your host, Claire Munde. Hi Patricia.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well.
Welcome to She Means Business.
Thank you.
So today we just want to have a conversation around leadership and leadership with purpose. So before we get the conversation going, I'd like you to ask a question, about 3 words that describe you, and I'll explain to you why I'm asking you that.
Okay.
But just give me those 3 words.
So first and foremost, Claire, thank you so much. When I think of Dr. Patricia, the brand, the leadership catalyst, actually the words that come across are leadership catalyst, enabler, truth giver, hope giver.
Awesome.
Yeah, more words than you've asked for.
No, but yes.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
And you know, when I think of you, I have watched your content. I've never interacted with you one-on-one,
Yes.
but I think of you as somebody who's very detail-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why I say that? Even as we were planning this interview,
Yes.
your team
Yes.
asked a number of questions and they were getting the clarity. And I was like, this is why she's successful, because you are getting each and every detail. We don't want to leave anything to chance. So
Yeah.
I think that was like, wow, that is good, because
Yeah.
sometimes people just come and show up, but the questions were asked.
No,
Right?
thank you for that. You know, they say that the devil is in the details. We think the angels are in the details.
Oh.
And that changes everything. So we have a big, audacious goal to reshape leadership across Africa and beyond. But the reason some of our clients keep coming back is because we remember the details. We remember you just had a baby. We remember you just lost someone close. We remember something that's very personal, and it's actually part of our DNA here to individualize as much as we are doing global work, that one person at a time matters.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
so thank you for noticing, and kudos to the team.
Yes,
Yeah.
kudos to them. So now let's just talk about your leadership journey. Before you started BLT, you've had quite a journey. I think the first time I heard about you a lot was when you were at SBS.
Yes.
And you kept on, you moved on, and now you're an entrepreneur. So tell us what that journey has been like, and then we'll talk about the details that people don't really talk about in entrepreneurship. Because everybody wants to be their own business owner. You know, I'm my own boss, but is it that rosy all the time? So tell us, what were the stages that led you to start your own business? And then we will talk a little bit from there.
You know, that's such a powerful question. First of all, I think people romanticize entrepreneurship, so we're going to end there. But for as long as I can remember, I was always selling something to solve a problem. And sometimes I wasn't selling it for money. It's interesting, we were doing a program with Diageo a couple of years ago, and someone says, Dr. Pat, because I just left Strath, Dr. Pat, you're an overnight success. You've just started this business and you're landing all these big corporate clients, and we are here now launching this program. And then one lady puts up her hand and says, and I say, no, I'm not an overnight success. And one lady says, no, in fact, I can confirm that she's not an overnight success. Because when we were in campus, Lower Kabete, BCom, University of Nairobi, Bachelor of Commerce, I was giving a class on personality development. And she said, you know, back in campus, she would call some of her friends, and you invite a friend, and would have these weekly sessions on how to develop your personality. So now, many years later, the work we are doing has everything to do with personality and character and leadership. So I didn't know, and I think when they say you connect the dots backwards, I didn't know that this would be what, because people look at me and think you had it all planned out. No, I didn't. I even didn't have the plan of having a doctorate, of running EdTech. It was nowhere on the cards. But looking back, one of the things is that we started from a family perspective is that you're just not idle. You have to make good use of your time. So even in campus, I was doing BCom and rushing off to do CPAs in the evening. Now, when you start using your time like that, and the fact that our parents also constantly taught us solve problems, solve problems. So one of the things I would tell any entrepreneur thinking of, or an entrepreneur who feels stuck, what problem are you solving? And has it changed such that the way you're solving it needs to change? So I never saw myself as someone who's amazing at selling, amazing at inspiring. No. In fact, my career started in audit. So you can imagine that shift from catching people and auditing them to inspiring them to become a higher, better, purer version of themselves, what we call your next best self. So as I went through audit and got into consulting, having worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers, who happened to now be our African client across a number of markets, to remind us that any job you do, even if you're not sure, please do it to the best of your ability. Because it's only mountains that don't meet. It is only mountains that don't meet. And the fact that they came full circle and said, we hear you're doing this, and PwC is a strong brand. For them to trust us was an ultimate honor. So I started off at PwC in one of those campus long holidays when people went on strike, and then proceeded to KPMG, and then decided, let me move now into consulting at Deloitte. And when I was getting into consulting, a lot of my friends were getting married. And some of them were cohabiting, and I was like, what is it now? What is all this? Like, planning a wedding is so much work. And because of being on so many committees, I was like, this is such a waste of time sitting to discuss pilau, wedding gowns, which by the way shouldn't be on the budget, rings, even honeymoon. I used to be appalled at the level of intimacy that is open to a whole committee. And I was like, I don't think this is the way we should do things. So I started my business. Before wedding planning was a thing, I had a business called Wedding Essentials. And I called my 2, 3, 4 friends and said, you know what? Let's see whether we can enable couples to focus on preparing for their marriage, and we'll help them prepare for the day. Because people had their lines crossed. You prepare for the day, you come back from honeymoon, and it's like an anticlimax. And I'm like, this thing should be getting better as we go on. And so entrepreneurship seemed to have been in my DNA. So from there, people would ask me, now all these things you do, we actually came up with something called a mind map for couples. And interestingly, the men were so interested in the conversation, because they were like, the way premarital counseling is being done is so drab. It's like a gun to your head. You got to do this thing, otherwise we won't marry you in this church. It's true. It's true. So now, because they know they've entrusted me with this big wedding budget, possibly the biggest party or event they'll ever have, hey, the man is like, okay, you have a conversation. I'm like, yeah, I think there's some things. And we designed this. Interestingly, I started wedding planning even before I was married. When I got married, I remember sitting with my husband, George, and I was like, are there some conversations that you think people should be having? I think this. He's like, yeah, let's do a mind map. So he did my first mind map. So we'd meet with a couple, and I'd tell them, have you talked about this? Have you talked about this? Have you talked about this? Consider this. Do this. So that by the time you're getting married, you're not getting surprised. I mean, to date, I still meet people who tell me, I just got engaged. Then we started having a conversation around children. I'm like, what have you been doing all this time? What have you been talking about all this time? But I understand life is hectic, eh?
Yeah.
And if you don't see some of these things from a family perspective, when you are interviewing for a job, you do research, you audit, you check references. I mean, why don't you do that also for a relationship? Anyway, so we got into Wedding Essentials and started speaking at bridal showers. And then people would tell me, gosh, you tell us so many things that no one tells us. You see, the social fabric has changed. We no longer have the aunties. And if they're there, they're giving you some advice and not giving you the other part. So out of that came what I think is the first program, Brides for Life, Wives for Life. And the reason why we designed that program is I've spent 8 plus 4, 12, plus MBA, maybe another 3, that's 15, plus doctorate, 5, 20 years on a career that I can change. But how much time have I spent investing in the family front? 2 weeks, if you're lucky, eh? And I was like, no wonder there's so many challenges. We're not building the muscle that gets you to move forward and to make this successful. And because of the feedback we got now from the wedding planning, I even had a bridal shop, and then now we got into this program. It was primarily corporate women doing business, who feel that they want to elevate their marriage, whether they're married or not. So it could be current or future, They could be single, they could be engaged, they could be even not dating at all, it's fine. And then there was also those who are married and felt, I can do better, we can improve this. So that program to date has probably had, we're now season 16, and there's a lot of media friends. In fact, I remember some of the TV and newspapers, the stations were like, when they aired the show, I mean, it was actually an article, I remember, a lot of men were like, when is the next graduation? Because we want to be there so that we can harvest. And I'm like, really? But really, out of that, I realized, so actually this idea of getting people to see who they are, to understand what holds them back, to coach and teach them long before coaching was a thing. Maybe I have a calling there. And then by then I had moved jobs. I was now working in industry. So it was a regional role, and it was to connect people, their work to strategy. And I remember looking at that and seeing, I'm interested in numbers, but I'm more interested in the people behind the numbers. So let's see, if this team is not seeing the strategy, how do we get them to see that their work really connects to strategy? And little by little, I kept on being asked, why don't you make this presentation, make the other one? And just backtracking, I remember in Deloitte, we had a client who was one of those high impact clients, and we'd done the research, we'd done all the consulting, we'd gone across the country. I was supporting my manager. I was still very young in my career, but I was the one doing the data findings and everything. And we had to present this to the board. And the night before, we are all set, we go home, we are ready. And the board was a high profile board. Because of confidentiality, I can't say who. But let me tell you, the following day I get to work. One of the things I was trained to do is, if you start work at 8, be there at 7. So there are no games with getting to work early, because when you're young, that fabric becomes your character. So I get there, and now this one, it was almost like get there at 6, because we were so nervous. Because the report was tough. What we had found on the ground was not what they wanted to hear. But I told you I'm a truth teller and a hope giver. Now, I didn't realize that until more recently. So I get to work, and the MD tells me, your manager is sick, so you're the one who's going to present. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, we could just lose this account on my lack of communication. So I sat down and and then he said, but you're the one who's done this report. You're the one who went around. It's true, you had the guidance, but you know these things inside out. So just do it. And I had no choice. And I remember I walked into the room. I mean, they probably could have had my heart racing and pounding. And there were very senior leaders in government, in private sector, older. And so one of them even said, hey, this one looks like my granddaughter. You know, so you have to be ready for those kind of things. And I said, oh. And I didn't allow that to distract me. But it gave me a lot more pressure, because they're now looking at me from the lens of, she's so young, what can she tell us? And I realized that these people, despite them being so senior, are ultimately human. So I remembered some of the things I had experienced in campus, the classes. I did marketing as a first degree. And one of the things we were taught is connect with a person. Don't look at them as a market. And so I thought, these directors must have a need. And because this was in a space where they were likely to be receivers of that service eventually, I decided to make it personal. I said, what if your mother was the one who was struggling to get the service that was being rendered? What if your father was being, and I got their attention. And then we walked them through the presentation, our findings, which were dire, and our proposed solutions. And at the end of it, I mean, I could see their defense just, you know, their defensiveness just going down. And when I look back now, because people then tell me, how is it that you speak like this? I really was thrown into the deep end. I was given a floater, you know, so as not to sink. But I also knew that the responsibility to deliver that message was squarely in my hands, as young as I was in my early 20s. And they took the advice, they took the report, and they started implementing it. So it's been a lot of trial and error. And by the time now I get into industry, launch this Brides for Life program, And then in my heart of hearts, I just felt I gotta spend more time with people. And so I took a gamble, and that's where you got to hear about our work at Strathmore Business School. It was a gamble. I had a younger family. Our daughter then was just under 1. I was working very long hours, typically 7 to midnight. There are times I would come down and I'm like, where did I park? Where did I park again? Because you're so exhausted. The work was very intense. It was meaningful work. But I thought that the season I'm in, newly married, we were trying to have a baby. Now we have this child, such a gift. Why don't I rethink my priorities? So when Strathmore came calling, so all these jobs, they kept headhunting me, which is very interesting around vision. Because I would always think, I'd like to work somewhere. I'd put down on my journal, I would like that put into work somewhere, and then they call. Or someone tells me these people are looking and I think I'm going to give you your CV. So this headhunting process continued. So when Strathmore called, I was like, okay, maybe they're onto something. And I'm like, this is like a startup, because the SBS was just starting. They were like 2-3 years old. And the director was going abroad to do her doctorate. And they had heard about my Brides for Life. So they're like, if you can put together a program that's so radical, and you have the strategy, marketing, finance, you have all that, why don't we take a gamble on each other? And I said, okay, but this is what I want. I want time. I want my contract to be within X hours. So even before flexibility became a thing, I was already thinking I want a 9 to 3 contract. And they're like, since we can't pay you industry, we'll give you the time. And then I asked for a few more things. And so even the lesson around negotiation, around not just money, but the non-financial things that matter for your season. Now, I can't take credit for all this. I had great mentors. All this time when I was trying to figure out who am I, what should I become, I had all these people who over time had become my good friends, mentors. So they would keep giving me insights that really helped me make those decisions. So Strathmore comes and I joined them. And it was a business school, so we start off with a couple of programs. And by the time I was leaving 10 years later, I think it was an amazing ride. I look back at the team I had there. We were daring. And I think they needed someone who had an entrepreneurial spirit. And I think businesses now, when I think about the board appointments that come in my way, they're saying, we want you on our corporate board because of your entrepreneurial experience, because the world we're serving now is nothing like it used to be. We want someone who thinks way beyond, the barriers that a lot of us sometimes put ourselves in. Because when you're an entrepreneur, I know I'm responsible for the families of my team. I'm responsible for my team and the families that they actually take care of. I mean, that's a serious responsibility, And so when you know that, it means that you have a very different, you have beyond a growth mindset, you have a benefit mindset. So as I finished my doctorate, as usually would happen when you do a program that's very powerful, I started feeling it's time to say goodbye. And I had a chat with my boss. I think it's so important to honor your boss or your client when you think the time is over. I think a lot of people are no longer doing that, and I think the school they are attending, which is telling them to just send an email, is totally misrepresenting who they should become. I speak like that very personally because I've realized every client, every boss I had is now my client. Yeah, because one of the things I learned very early, both from mentors and my parents, is finish well, finish respectfully, finish tidily. Yeah, don't be haughty, don't be proud that now you have another opportunity, so who are you guys again? Can I just get rid of it? No. Just finish well, have the humility. Remember, you prayed for this job. So now when you're finishing, don't treat it like it's trash, right? So I remember talking to my boss. I had a very senior role. I was vice dean. So I knew I was on the succession map. And so I honored him we talked for a year. I told him, I think I should be moving on. They knew I had a business. They actually encouraged us to consult, because academia, if you do consulting, actually strengthens your ability to come up with good solutions. But I hardly had time to do that. Between family and a big docket of executive education, I was like, breakthrough will wait. And as a matter of fact, I had registered Breakthrough many years ago when I needed a breakthrough. So people look and they say, their name is so good. I'm like, thanks. I needed a breakthrough and I didn't know how to get it. So I registered the company and said, one day I'll come back. So I told him, I think it's time. And he's like, no, let's try and see what we can do. I said, okay, no problem. Let's figure it out. But as the year wore on, I thought, you know what, the season had come to a close. And I was like, let's see whether I can now go and try and do this. And forever indebted and happy to continue engaging in any way. I still send clients to Strathmore. I don't see them as competition. I see us as all collaborators trying to do different pieces of the leadership work. And so I left, and I left with one client. Now, to live with one client, either you have a lot of faith or you're very foolish. You know, yes. I think entrepreneurs, you need to have a bit of a dose of both.
Yeah.
And because I had been praying, over that year I was praying for signs, you know, almost like the writing on the wall, right? But you know, you don't quite see the writing on the wall, you pay attention to the little nudges. So I've been praying and asking God, show me. I'd talk with my husband, I'm like, I think it's time. But because you see, I've taken the gamble before. This gamble wasn't as difficult. And I think this is the thing about muscles. When the gym instructor tells you your muscle is growing, even if it's painful, the next time when you try that exercise, it's a little easier, right? And so I was time to say goodbye. And the sign was that one client I had told me, we are so excited with what you've done, but we're not sure you can do more. Because do you have the capacity? And I was like, huh? Here comes the writing on the wall. I said, I think I might. Let's see. So we went on to have a conversation. And that client opened up Africa for us. So don't despise humble, small beginnings was a big lesson for me. And a big lesson because a lot of people think, oh my goodness, you have 100 and I don't know how many followers, 1,000 followers on LinkedIn and 40,000 on TikTok, which by the way, we just got onto recently.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like, oh, we want to be like, I'm like, to tell you the truth, it was one person at a time. It is one, we don't buy these numbers. It is one person at a time, one little thing at a time. And so I left, and when I started off Breakthrough, 2019 was amazing. I was in and out of JKIA. We had a lot of work. I told my kids, next year, I won't travel as much. You know, be careful what you ask for. So 2020 rolls in, and with it comes the COVID-19. And what was more, I think, daunting is our Your Next Best Self conference. It was the third year. Was supposed to be on the 14th of March. The first COVID case was found on 13th.
Yeah.
So we postponed. It was a sold out, just like it is this year. Your Next Best Self, Kempinski, we take the entire hotel. Sold out. Some of Ugandans had already arrived in the country. I remember I was attending a funeral service of a friend's dad, so my phone was off. So the minute I feel, because we've done everything now, I was like, I'm just going home, final preps, tomorrow is the day. And because it was also like the second one that we had done fully, we were so excited about this. And my husband calls and says, have you heard? I'm like, have I heard what? Have you heard COVID has been found? I'm like, where? He's like, here. I'm like, and what is the cabinet secretary saying? He's like, it's not very clear. It's still too early. And I say, well, I'm not going to take a risk. We're not going to have a super spreader event. So you can imagine convening the team and deciding we have to say no. We are postponing this to a later date. And we have to talk to every corporate. I remember like Kenjan was sending people from across the country. These Ugandans have come in, others are flying in. I mean, it was a lot. We have talked to the speakers, the hotel. But the power of relationships, the hotel just told us, we'll hold your money. Don't worry, we'll hold it until when, and if you want it back, it's okay. And so we decided also, by extension, we are going to return any money anyone wants for a limited period of time. So you can imagine the chaos then. I don't know why we were buying toilet paper. Do you remember? It was so crazy. Huh? What was that about? So I'm there in the supermarket buying toilet paper, having calls. Oh my. But let me tell you, that conference decision got people to trust us even more. Because I said there's no human life that is worth us running this thing. So we sent out the comms, and then a good friend of mine, Florence, told me, why don't you just go to Kempinski on Saturday, just in case. I'll join you. Come with your team. And we talked to the hotel. We said, we know you have no event, given the situation, but we're going to sit there in the lobby. Let's have some coffee. Because women, at the time it was only for women, and women would deck out. People would buy outfits. So I could always tell that one is coming to our summit. And I'm like, man, she's got it ready. Then she comes and finds an empty room because either the communication didn't get to her.
Yeah.
So we said, let's sit there and let's honor them and tell them, thank you. Unfortunately, given the situation, your life is more important. So we are not holding this right now. But we can have a coffee and then, you know. And so that was also a big lesson on crisis management and how when people say people before profits, it's not a joke. And out of that, 2020 then became, I mean, I got a little depressed for a bit of time. I was like, okay, now I'm here. And now I'm an entrepreneur without clients, because most clients were like, what do you mean leadership development? We are trying to survive.
To live.
Yeah, this survival is more important. And as I sat there, I remember that's when I decided it's time to do something different. So I had young people who kept telling me, why don't you start a podcast? Now, you know, podcasts now are very, everybody's doing a podcast. At the time, interestingly, I had sent someone to buy a podcast set from the US, but it was still in its box. I looked at it and said, one day we shall talk. The one day had arrived. So the same idea of your next best self became our podcast, and we have about 83 episodes, and a lot of leaders listen to it. It's actually coming back anytime within the next couple of days. We are relaunching it because we just took a break to just consolidate and rethink it. But it was one of those podcasts. To date, people tell me, I go home with you, I wake up and listen to you. I've listened to that podcast on failure 20 times. You know, I feel like I know you. We got a lot of speaking engagements regionally and globally, but it was also connected to the summit, your next best self, because everybody wants to grow. Sometimes they just don't know how. And we're not saying your best self, we're saying your next. So if yesterday I lost my cool, today I'll lose it a little less, and tomorrow much less, and the following day maybe none. So it's that little gradual growth that changes everything. And so here we are, and I'll talk about Rice School later.
Awesome, awesome. And you put such great points. I like the idea of problem solving. What problem are you solving before you think of going into entrepreneurship, if you want to play the long game? And then also you talked about honor. It seems to be a very big thing in your life, honor. So even if you're leaving, just honor that person, because it's about relationships. And we'll talk a little bit about that because your book talks about social capital, your latest book. We'll talk a little bit about that. But let's talk about executive presence. You know, Patricia, or Dr. Patricia, and we'll talk about the doctor a little bit more. When I've seen you for the longest time, you had this mohawk look. You had a signature look.
It's coming back. I love it.
And now I've seen you experimenting a lot. This is a new hairstyle. I saw you on some other show back then. But executive presence, they say you speak from the way you look even before you open your mouth. What has that been like for you? Because when I see you, you're really well put together. Let me just say that. From your nails to the way you look, you just... you look good.
You.
So what is executive presence? And for women who are trying to rise to their next best self, why should they pay attention to the way they look before what they have to offer comes out?
That's such a powerful question. And you know, a lot of times people have considered executive presence to be just the look. We just ran our first presence code recently, and I had to do a lot of research around really what is this presence we're talking about. Interestingly, the first thing that enters the room before you is your energy. And people just don't realize that your energy is what introduces you even before you speak. So if you've had a bad day and you're going into a meeting, if you're not cognizant of that negative energy that's coming from a tough meeting, you actually infect people. In fact, I say, ask yourself, are you infecting or affecting? And so executive presence first is the energy you bring into the room. And so be mindful of that. So when one is more mindful and takes a pause, so I could be coming from a tough meeting and I'll be like, what do I need to do to decompress? Do I need to breathe? Do I need to walk? Do I need to pray? Do I need to drink water? What do I need? Do I need to journal? What do I need to do so that I don't infect the next people, the next person with what just happened. And that's a hard thing, eh? It's a lot of self-mastery, eh? But you become better at it as you go along because you find the things that make sense for you. Now, when you add that now to competence, so people want executive presence, but you're not doing the hard work. There's nothing that beats ruthless preparation. You've got to be prepared, you've got to know what it is you're talking about, but you also have to have the humility, especially now, to realize that you don't know everything. And so a lot of people think that they have to mask the fact that they don't know. The humility of saying, that's an interesting question, allow me to come back to you, actually gains credibility for you. Now, beyond all that, then now you top. So it's inside out. Then you top it out with emotional responsibility. I think when people think about executive presence, I know I'm coming to that around the look, but what's your emotional responsibility when you walk into a room? Can you read the room? Can you tell these people are not ready for your message? Can you tell that they need a moment? Can you tell that there's something here that's not been said that I need to listen to? Can you tell, and can you then make the right decision? Because executive presence is knowing that the language, the insights that you're about to share should impact positively and move a certain agenda forward to solve a problem, but you take responsibility and accountability for it. And then ultimately how you look. So in my first book, I write about dress how you want to be addressed, you know, and you know, people can consider that controversial, and that's okay. But I think that dressing is such a private action with such a public impact. To date, there are people who say, I'm coming for your next thing to just see how you look. I'm like, really? And I'm like, okay, I hope we can go beyond the look. Yeah. Of course, we learn a lot. But we're just like, those nails, those words, you know, all that. But I think really when I think about where did that even start from? My parents, my mom, even when she retired and she was running a pharmacy, she still wore her professional clothes to date. And now she's retired and at home, taking care of my dad. We just met this morning right here at Mass. Really smart. I have never seen my mom in a dera. So one of the things she said is people would come to the pharmacy and I was helping out. And sometimes we just sold Panadols. A pair. It was a pair at 8 bob. I even remember. And she says some people come here just for the greeting. Because one of the things we learned is greet people. Someone has a headache. I mean, I walk into shops these days and I'm like, are you selling greetings also? I mean, what is this about?
I know.
And I'm thinking the owner of that business has no idea. They're paying rent, that's stock, those are employees, and those employees are like on their phone. They're looking at you like, do you think you can afford our stuff? Maybe not, let me, until she wants. So greeting people, because when you greet someone, that's sunshine on their soul. So my mom, I can't remember my mom being tardy. No. So I think by osmosis, you grow up seeing someone who's paying attention. And she wasn't breaking the bank. She was just dressing beautifully, decently, coordinating her colors for the season, and just being comfortable enough to be able to do the work that she's doing. So that I think has had a very dramatic effect on me. And I would always say, and now, I mean, I even have an image stylist now because of the kind of work I'm doing. But for the longest time, I even did a bit of image styling work because I realized one of the things that lets women down, you may know everything, you have the competency, you're figuring out your energy, you walk into the room and people dismiss you first 30 seconds because it's too tight, it's too short, cleavage. I mean, there are all sorts of things that, so now I even have a formula on things you should be thinking about. And I have found that dressing is also a way of showing respect. Yeah? So I'm making an effort because I respect you and I respect this show and I respect what we're doing. And I'm coming to work dressed in a certain because I respect this work I'm doing. And if, you know, a lot of people believe in God, I do. And if you think about the body being the temple of the Holy Spirit, then adorn it, treat it well, take care of it. Because some people, you are the only book they'll ever read. And if you think about it like that, it has a very different connotation as to how your dressing could actually be building or breaking others, including yourself. So I always say, consider the season, dress for the body you have, not the one you want. Huh? Because many of us are in that trap of I want to be a size 1. No. The body you have now is the body you should dress. And I think in Kenya, in Africa, you can dress from any budget. And you just need to pay attention to getting clothes that can serve you for a long time. When we were building our home, one of the things that we made a decision to do is we wanted to move in within a certain period of time. We need to finish that house. I was doing my doctorate in the US, so one of the modules was in New York, and I would go during summer. And I guess by now you know I like clothes and shoes. I like nice things. So I would walk and I'd be like, look at those shoes from 9 West. Then I remember that's a bag of cement. I walk past, I look at the dress there, and then I think, oh, those are tiles. For 4 years, I didn't buy new clothes. But when I look back, the clothes I had bought prior to that time tied me through the season. So getting classic styles that serve you even with body adjustments, they're not so tight that when a little shift, you cannot wear them, is also prudence, the ability to actually be a good steward of the resources we have. And now one of the things I'm daring women to do is, who says you must wear that outfit once? No, especially for evening events. I mean, you invest in a gown and you're like, if I wear it again, they'll remember. I'm like, yeah, let them remember.
Preach that.
Let them remember because the men wear the same suit. Let's learn from these guys.
It's true.
And I'm like, you can accessorize it differently. And who says that by wearing it the second time, it's going to diminish you or demean you in any way? And so it's just to see whether you can develop more of a capsule wardrobe, or to find ways in which in the different seasons you can amplify something with an accessory, and it's the same outfit but the way you accessorize it changes it. And so I've found that dressing, executive presence is a strong combination of many things, some of which I've mentioned now.
Yeah, I like that. Are you infecting or affecting? My goodness, energy is very important. Yeah, and I also like that you really don't have to break the bank.
No.
Yeah. And it's honoring somebody by the way you dress. Even like in weddings, you come with jeans. Really, like we spent all this and you really came with your jeans. So honor people.
I was a wedding planner, so I
know.
You
know that.
I'll be like, I'm not judging. I'm looking, but I'm not judging. But why? Why is it that this? Are you on the way to somewhere
else?
And so as a result, this is what you did. And we were colonized by the Britons, by the British. So if you think about colonization, it plants certain seeds. So we are we are more of a formal dressing kind of society. I mean, we're doing work now across West Africa. We're hopefully getting into Nigeria soon. I can't wait, because those ones, they're unapologetic. And I love it, because one of the things I was teaching our daughters is life is an occasion, not a rehearsal. So just show up fully. Who says tomorrow is promised? It's not. So today, let's just do our very best. I know we'll fall short, but that intention shines through. And so even when someone is working in your home, give them the uniform so that to preserve their clothes. It's not because I'm demeaning Nanani at home. That uniform is so that when I see her on Sunday, I'm like, wow. Because if she was wearing her personal clothes to do the work of the home, which is very powerful, important work, then what I'm doing is I'm not also honoring her clothes and her personal stuff. So that uniform, I just think about hospital. If someone says, I'm a nurse, and they're not in uniform, you'd be like, really? So uniform also in terms of presence, because some of us are working in spaces where you wear a code, maybe it's a uniform or a branded something. Just wear it well, because that's also part of your professional identity. Yeah,
I like the way you put that issue of the nannies. It's also honoring them. It's an interesting way to look at it. But now let's talk about your author journey. I remember I was watching your Engage talk, and you were saying you're an accidental author, and you started one book, then another book, and another book, and now we are here with the 8 laws of wealth, or you'll correct me for that. But what has the writing journey been like for you? And when you write books, what's your why for that? Because very many people have different reasons for writing. I've also written one book.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Need to share that.
Yes. And for me, it was just to share my experiences. But for you, what has your writing journey been about? Why have you written all these books, and what do you intend to achieve by that? Because I've also gotten questions like, how do I become a millionaire? And I'm like, it's not that easy.
A millionaire through writing.
Through writing. So what's your why?
That's such an interesting question. It's good that you asked that question, because even when I was doing my doctorate, I met people who are like, I want to be called doctor. That's why I'm doing a doctorate. I'm like, then you've got it all upside down. If your goal is to get the title, then you shouldn't be doing this, which, by the way, is why the statistics show us that only 30% of doctoral students and candidates complete. Because your intention is already in the wrong space. So if that was the intention, then you don't have the mental bandwidth to get through this. So in the same vein, when I thought about the doctorate, for me, it was to learn more about specific challenges that leaders were facing, to come up with solutions that will contribute to their growth. So people say, yeah, you're doing it to add to the body of knowledge. Yeah, it's a body of knowledge, but I am more interested in people taking that knowledge and acting on it. So during the pandemic, these young people of mine were like, oh, you started the podcast, that's so good. We're really loving it. Have you thought about writing? I'm like, writing what? It wasn't even on my vision board, and I'm avid at visioning and strategizing personally and business-wise. And I remember sitting there and thinking, you've done a doctorate. You can write a book, can you not? But it was very scary, because it's like the ultimate act of vulnerability. You're writing this book, you're pouring your stories and other reflections and insights and ideas. I'm not even sure if anyone is going to buy it, 1, and then read it, 2, and then apply, 3. But because at that moment, collectively as a globe, we were collectively depressed. So I thought, what can I do to solve this problem? Remember the solving the problem? And then previously, I was teaching Disrupt Yourself Before You're Disrupted. I even have a signature session. And I remember someone saying, doctor, it's time to take your own medicine. And I was like, okay, actually, how do I disrupt myself before we get disrupted again? So we're in a pandemic situation. We no longer have clients, but we have a digital space. So why don't we develop some digital programs? Let's see whether we can give people hope on how to navigate this time. I remember the first session we did, we even asked people to wear a color, a touch of red. And you remember, people say, can you see me? Can you see me? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Can you see me? Can you see me? Because you're like, where is the camera? The camera is here. I remember telling someone, I can see your foot. Where is the camera actually? But that alone, and I told people, put on your cameras, because human beings need to connect. And to date, by the even in our executive presence, one of the things I say is, if you're joining a call, as much as possible, put on your video. And if you can't, because sometimes you can't, make sure that your profile has a picture so people can engage with you. Otherwise, you're just some nameless somebody behind there who no one can tell even whether you're there. So going back to the writing, so I sat down and I started thinking, this formula I came up with on how to rise, how to grow, that came out of my doctorate, how can I make it more palatable, less academic, more practical, so that more people can rise, because we're collectively depressed. So as a solution, I said, you know what, let me start writing. Since now, we are grounded, between the dishes, a few calls, maybe I can make good use of time. And I started writing because I realized not everyone will come into my class. Not everyone gets an opportunity to be coached. Not everyone will get to experience breakthrough leadership transformation or Rise School. But I want everyone to get an opportunity to grow. So that was my motivation, that lady in Kazakhstan could access my book on Amazon. And I'll tell you a funny story. I was interviewed, in fact, Citizen, one of the night evening shows by Victoria before she moved on. And I come to church the following day, and the guard says, I watched you yesterday. Kumbe, you're daktari. I'm like, yeah. So then he says, I want to buy your book. This is a security guard. And I'm like, wow. Even for me, it was the learning agility. And I tell him, okay, which one? Rise and anything else you have. So that Christmas I decided, I think Rise was sold out at the time. So I gave him another book. He's like, wow, you're gifting me. I gave the guards there. And so the following couple of weeks later, he says, I'm still interested in, I want to buy. I know you gifted me, I want to buy. And I tell him, in fact, you're right. I think we're having a sale. So I tell him, he said, but I had checked your site and I saw the price was this. Why are you giving me a discount? I'm like, because we have a sale. And I autographed the book and I gave it to him. And one day as I'm coming out of Mass, he tells me, you have no idea how that book changed my life. I hope you're writing others. In fact, I told him, you have no idea how you've helped me because I'm writing another book and I'm asking myself why I'm doing this. So that was the reason, that there's something a book will teach you, and because it's you and the book, and it'll trigger, it'll challenge, it'll point you in a certain direction. And I also feel that as Africans, we are not avid readers. And that might be part of the reason why we see our problems in the way we see them. So that's also another mission, to make Africans authors and readers. But really, I say that leaders who don't read cannot lead. Now, I come from a place where that's a tongue twister, so I'll say it slowly. Leaders who don't read cannot lead in the work of today and the work of the future. The challenges are too many. So I'm a book DJ. So I read multiple books at the same time. My goal is to read 100 books this year, last year, like that. And I'm reading on parenting Gen Z, parenting Gen Alpha, marriage, because we've been married about 21 years, taking care of parents who are aging, growing a business across borders, leading multi-generational teams, fun, I mean, whatever, yeah? So whatever problem you're facing, someone has written the book. And if they haven't, write it. So for me, it was, let's get to the ends of the earth and get people to read. And when I think about that, was 2020. That feedback from that book, people said, you've got to teach us how to rise. So you see, again, it's like these things keep unfolding. It's like, take the next step and then you'll see the next step. You'll see the road unfolding. It's not like I could see we would be now running Africa's first digital leadership platform, Rise School. No, we were not trying to get that. We're just thinking, people keep telling us they can't see us, they can't come to us. So how do we transcend time and space? Now we have a book. What if I develop a program from that book? So that's how Rise Masterclass came up. And as a result, Rise School. The following year, I wrote Pose. And I remember we had a patient in our family. So I actually wrote Pose in the hospital, waiting for him to get better. He's much better now. And what I did is I just wrote my reflections, journaled, just my reflections. And then I got my team to send them out for International Women's Day. And then one friend tells me, Patricia, you know, I've been printing out these things of yours, and now they've reached 50. That's another book. And I was like, oh, you see, accidental. And I'm like, oh, so maybe I can come up with reflection questions. Being a coach, when you ask people the right questions, powerful questions, they can really grow. So for every quote, let me write some question. So therein came Pose. Because when you rise, you actually need to pause. Now, the following year, people come back and say, you know, it's 2022, and we are trying to get to this new normal. Maybe we need to reinvent ourselves. I had done a whole series on the podcast on reinvention, and I just thought, why don't I just take that series and build a book from it? So that's how Reinvent came. So 3 years back to back, I wrote a book. But I must say that to write the first book, the company you keep has a very big effect. So I have a friend, Jenny Karina, who's a prolific author. And being my friend, I was like, oh, you mean these authors are not those guys out there who you don't know? So I asked her, how did you write this book? She told me, oh, let me connect you to my publisher and editor. And he happened to be doing a program during COVID for how to write a book, 21 days, of which somewhere I dropped out. I was like, this thing is too hard. And he's like, no, Dr. Patricia, I'm seeing you're not responding to the class assignments. What's going on? I told him, you know, I just did a Google search on how many leadership books have been written, and they go into millions. In fact, you can't end that list. Yes. So I'm not seeing why should I do this? And then on top of that, I'm afraid of looking foolish. He wrote back. He said, number one, yes, leadership books have been written, but there are people who will only listen to your voice. So why do you want to deny them that? And then he says, if your foolishness will help people grow and will serve God, then be foolish. And you know, with that, the imposter syndrome I was feeling, just got released. Finished the book. It was a family project to come up with a cover. Even the title, Rise, was not the title I was thinking. We sat there with my family. I'm like, you guys, and my husband has done marketing. He told me, think of one word so that it's easy to remember. I said, okay, let me think. Okay, maybe Rise, Rising, Arise. He said, let's do Rise. That was it. So Rise, the book, gave birth to Rise School, and then now the 3 books. So it's been an intense season, and this year I just thought it's time to go back to writing. So many people come to me with a question of wealth, and they're constantly asking me, how do you get wealthy? And I'm like, what is wealth to you, first of all? They're like, bank balance. I'm like, I think that's the first problem. That's actually, money is an outflow of everything else we do. So I sat down, and some young people in our early risers challenged me to write something. And I was telling them about capitals. When you're building a business, you need capital. But people don't think about their lives from a capital lens. So as I was introducing the masterclass earlier this year, I did a little bit around capitals. But that gave me the idea that maybe I should write a book on this. Short book, people don't have long attention spans, so shorter book now, maybe more punchy, more action-oriented, reflect and then do something. And that's how Wealthy came to pass. And the reason for a limited time we're giving Wealthy for free, virtually, is because every human being deserves to be wealthy. And when you read the 8 capitals, you see that financial is just one. And many of the other capitals, we have them, but we've never seen them from the angle of being wealthy. And so that's why I'm an accidental author, constantly listening, what do people need to hear. Now, next Saturday at the Your Next Best Self Summit, where you're invited and everyone else, I'll be launching my 5th book. I won't say its name. So we're releasing that because also to honor seasons. When you're in the season when you can write. The season comes to a close at some point. So when you have the opportunity to do something, I believe that ideas are planted in my mind, are planted in your mind differently. I think God is very wise. He'll give you the idea for this show. He'll give you the idea for the questions we're talking about. And He's not giving me those ideas. Now, if you don't use those ideas, it's a gift you're allowing to rot. If I don't use these ideas and make them come to life, I'm allowing a gift to rot. And then we start being smelly.
Yeah.
And smelliness comes in being moody, your energy being low, just feeling this is not worthwhile. It doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from feeling a sense of frustration around something. But maybe the frustration is a lack of obedience. And I used to think obedience is for small children. More recently, I've realized obedience is about listening to those like kind of divine whispers. And sometimes they come in terms of people asking you a question a number of times, and then you realize, maybe I should do something about this. So that's how I've become an accidental author. Now it's beginning to look like it's by design and default. But that's how it started.
Awesome.
And all these books are now on Amazon.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you can access them. And I wrote, what's the word? I read out Rise. So you can actually get in on Audible. That was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Nice.
I was like, why did I use this hard word here? How do you say it again? I was even checking, how do you pronounce this word? You know, because I also felt there are people who are dyslexic, people are busy. If you listen to the book when you're in traffic, it can still give you some value.
Awesome. Good job on that. Good job on that. And I'd like us to shift gears just as we start to close the show.
Yes.
Work-life integration. We don't talk about balance anymore. You know, even I read Wealth in one sitting, and it's your daughter who wrote the foreword, and I was like, how beautiful is that? That was really nice.
Thank you for reading it.
Yeah.
I'm so honored.
Yes, I was like, well, I have to read it.
Well done.
Thank you. So tell me about the role family plays and how you balance or integrate your family life and your work life, because as you said, you're moving to Nigeria soon, you have all these things happening for you. How do you make sure that family is not suffering and work is also not suffering as it's growing? And I remember also watching your Engage talk, and you spoke about, you know, the struggles. You're a mom of 5 and you speak about that. I want you to speak about that and how you just integrate everything. Yeah.
It's just a great way to get to the tail end. So by the time I was getting married about 21 years ago, I was like, I want a big family. And so we got married. It was one of those weddings. We were both firstborns. We had like 1,000 guests. I loved it. You know, I just loved it. You know me, I love people. So I'm like, you know what, we have to make this thing count. In fact, when I look back and I think about our wedding budget, it's now equivalent to someone's dress. So I was like, okay, life has really changed, you know? Yeah. We loved it. It really rained, I remember, on our wedding day. And looking back, I think those were blessings. But being a wedding planner, that was not funny, yeah? Because I was like, please God, you can't just spare me today. I mean, I plan all these people's weddings and then now what is this? But over time, I remembered, carry the sunshine. So I went into marriage, having been through a lot of programs on how to prepare well, being open to life. And when you're open to life, it means you're not putting any barriers to hold back for children to come your way. And then God tests us. And it was a real test. In fact, I look back and I think the first year of our marriage, those vows were really tested in sickness and health, you know, for better, you know, all that. And it was hard because, you know, when your child goes to heaven, first of all, you're getting to know each other. Then you have, and I remember it was 2 in the first year. And I was in a new job, and it was a male-dominated role. So these guys also have been like, you know, who's this chick we hired here? And so that was a lot of pressure, just figuring that out. But I must say that having a very, what can I say? I've had over time a support circle that has been very powerful, what I call a personal board of directors. I mean, I call it that now, but really I had a priest, still see a priest every week, being Catholic, not only for confession, but I do think, I kept telling myself, people do facials every month, you clean your face every day. I mean, why not clean your soul regularly, yeah? So the principle is the same. But also beyond the confession is the conversation around whatever is weighing down my soul. That almost single-handedly has changed how I view tragedies and challenges. Because you see, you're going into this confessional box and I'm talking about what it is that I may be struggling with. And he gives me such a different perspective. And then I have a number of mentors, accountability mentors. You could have different mentors, but the ones that you keep having a conversation with to keep you on track. That also has been a game changer. And that started way back when I was in campus. So I've had the privilege, because really it's a humbling privilege to have had such people around me, so that even when these things happened, it didn't finish me as it could have. So when we finally got our firstborn, who then did my makeup today,
good job,
a brilliant girl, thank you. Then for me, it also gave me a lot of perspective. When you've had brushes with death, you take life in a very different way. You take life seriously, you also take it joyfully, because you're like, hey, I mean, how is this so difficult? The way me have been ready, how is this so difficult? Why? And I remember at the time, I had friends who's like, they would hold hands and they become pregnant. I'd be like, what is this? Yeah. And they were even feeling shy. They're like, gosh, I don't know how to tell Patricia, we're expecting again, they're still struggling, you know? But I was like, it's okay, I'm happy for you, it's a bit hard, but our season will come. So that helped me a lot. And I think at the time, even when I look back, even the third one, who we lost in between the 2 that we have, then I had to get therapy, because I was far along. And so when it happened, even when I went back to work, people were still saying congratulations. And so I remember I had to get the therapy to heal, at least to start, to know how to respond, to just know how to cope. Therapy even for our family, because even that young child has suffered a loss. So we shouldn't disregard who else is hurting here. And I think the ones who don't say much suffer more. So my heart goes out to a lot of men out there who have suffered loss in one way or the other, and just don't know. They don't know who to talk to because they've been taught not to show it. So some of the work we're doing now is going to be very specific towards men. But even when we started Your Next Best Self, the summit, and people come there and they get some form of healing and some form of release, because the stories are authentic. And it was almost like I started another ministry around breathing life into people's dreams, even when loss has happened. And so I have found your mess, someone said your mess is your message to the world when you deal with it. Yeah. And so when people ask about purpose and your message to the world, I think it's very connected to the pain you have been through, for as long as you do the work to move from being bitter to better. That's hard work, and it doesn't happen quickly. And I write about it in some of my books around turning your deep wounds into deep wisdom. Because your wounds can be battle scars, and they become the source of your pity parties. And you're so happy to keep repeating this pity story. But that pity story is not doing you any good. You need to figure out how to get the help you need to manage that. Now, with that in place, it occurred to me very early that, of course, family was very important. But I'm a firstborn, so being a superwoman comes naturally. But I was like, no, you need to build systems. And I remember an older friend of mine told me, build systems, Patricia, in your home. You're building them at work. Do the same at home. And that's where integration comes in. So what are the systems? So the systems are what happens at what time. It's as basic as that. We eat dinner at 7, so meal preparation should have happened X period of time before. We brush shoes at this time. Who's responsible? You take the shoes, you go and clean them. We make our bed, whatever it is. We have a family meeting once a week on Sundays at this time. We're even trying a family. I must say, we're just trying a family book club. Let me just say, I hope my family is watching. I'm really trying to push this thing. But anyway, so the family book club also, because I'm like, you do this with so many corporates, why can't we do it here? And when the Rise Masterclass started, we had a global class, and it's another one that's coming up later in the month, in November. One of the pieces of insight, one of the leaders told me, this idea of building systems at home was a game changer. So, hire the right people at home and pay them their dues. Don't pay minimum wage, pay living wage. There's a big difference. Yeah. This idea of going home up country to get someone who doesn't even know how to flush a bathroom, a toilet. It is wrong. If your goal is to do that so you can pay them peanuts, for sure you will have more risks than you imagine. So that's the other thing. So hire someone at home or the people you need around you to build that ecosystem so that you do the signature things that only you can do. Yeah. The other thing is automate processes at home. So let's say you're in this top job and you're still brushing the carpet with a brush. What is that about? In this day and age. Yeah. I'm like, come on. No, seriously. Yeah. I'm like, what's that about? Yeah, because I don't know. I'm like, same principle. Yes. You have a MacBook and then here. No. So invest in systems. And there are such good systems. Meal preparation is so easy with the right systems or the right support that if you want to cook a meal every week or every so many days or every daily, there's some of my friends who cook daily. Maximum respect to them because they're able to do that, and it's one of the things I'd like to do a little bit more of, is then get the meal preparation, because that's where the hard work is. The peeling, the cutting, the washing, the what. Come in, do the cooking, and you can do it. Now, one of the things that I learned is to bundle things together. So let me cook with you, this younger daughter, and let me walk with you. So that way you're doing two things together, but also spending time. Because I think a lot of times people want to do things sequentially. I think we're now living in what we're calling the bunny world. So you have to be non-linear, which means you find ways to do multiple things and integrate them. But I think the biggest lesson around life-work integration is to honor your season, know your season. So there was a season during the pandemic where I released my nanny. We didn't have a nanny. And I said, this is going to be a great season for us to learn how to do everything, you know. And it was the pandemic time. I'm trying to reconstruct the business. I'm trying to do all these things, and at the same time. But I think looking back, it was probably one of the best times from a family perspective that we had, because everybody was part of everything. You see. Then there's a season where I had to travel more, because that's what it requires. So I think another thing around life work integration is know your stakeholders. You know, people use these words for boards. Yes. No, you have family stakeholders. Let them understand what season you're about to get into, so that way they don't feel ambushed, And so that way you can actually clear off anything that is superfluous, any excesses, so that you focus on what matters in that season. So if I'm traveling a lot, then I'm going to try and figure out how do I reduce my socials so that then I can spend time with them. And what do they want to do? Earlier on, we used to do a date, and they were reminding me that I need to go back. And we used to do a date, and we used to say a date at 100 bob. Yeah, so the date is not expensive. And I remember one of the dates, one of our daughters remembers, is that date of 100 bob. And then what we'll do is, today I decide, next week you decide, next week like that, yeah? But then for me as a mom, my goal was, it's not a time for lecturing. It's also not a time for my agenda. She talks about whatever she wants to talk about, and I listen. And for me, I'd like to go back to that routine because I think it was really powerful. It also helped me understand what is in their minds, what do I need to pay attention to, and how do I help them move forward in whatever it is. So I have found, and last but not least, the power of a great husband. So being friends, and that's important. And you know, marriage is a covenant, right? And you get into marriage and you hope and you do your best to make it work. So my heart goes out. Even in our programs now, we have people who are separated, divorced, and I think that marriage is under a lot of siege. I think that when you think about the family, it's the core of society. If you break that, you can break anything else. So there's a lot that's going on in that space. But I have found having Murugami as my friend. And you know, I was telling him Citizen is coming. He's like, hey, what? I'm like, Citizen is coming. And you know, and he did up this office. I told him, you know, our budget is X, but I want a classy office. Come and do it, you know. And I remember I was going and even buying the furniture and sitting and checking, is it comfortable? So one of the pieces of advice someone gave us many years ago is every year have a project together. Because the humdrum of life can introduce a lot of boredom and routine. But if you have a project, you have something to talk about. You have something that's pulling together apart from bills, school fees, and mortgages. And you have something that you can also build a different aspect of you, of him, and of the relationship. So I found that has been very useful. And so every year I'm always thinking, what's the project we're doing this year? Even if it's a small project, because then it galvanizes you together, it gels you, you have more to think about. But also I say, if I'm interested in my friends, my girlfriends, yeah, I'm interested in what they're interested in, why can't I be more interested also in what he's interested in? So if he was interested in football, then I would be interested in football, you know, by extension. So there are some areas that I'm like, I need to build more interest there because I've seen that's a new interest, and hopefully he's doing the same with me. But I have found a lot of times high-performing women don't realize that their partner, their husband, actually would like to help them. So you're there, oh, I'm so tired, I'm so fed up. But then he's like, but you've not asked me. You see? So that Messiah complex of you're the one to save everyone. Imagine the Messiah job is gone. It went a long time ago. So the fact that you're still applying for it, so to allow yourself to be helped by people, I think is very important. And to start with the ones who are home. I think as a last thing is children can do a lot more than you give them credit for. From as young as age 4. That bed can be made. Even if it's milima na mabonde, bumpy to whichever level, it can actually be done. And what I have found is we started even the packing. I don't pack for my children. No. For as long as I think, I don't know, from age 5, 6.
Yeah.
You pack and you have a checklist.
Yeah.
And if you forget, you will remember.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
And that's what I realized, that a lot of times women are overloaded because you're carrying everybody's everything, because that's what makes you maybe feel I'm doing something, or maybe that's what you conditioned yourself, so you don't realize that I shouldn't be doing this. So allow your family to do more. They're happy to do it.
Yeah. And
actually chores and those kind of things help people feel that they're part of something bigger. So this whole thing of life-work integration, in a summary, That has been my experience.
I like that. Yeah, stop the Messiah complex. Just get the help. Ask for it.
Ask for it.
Yeah.
And figure out what it is that only you can do. So there's a certain recipes, only me.
Yes.
Only I can cook those ones.
Exactly.
You know, so that then at least I have, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not good at chapos, so for me, my nanny must be good at chapos.
Yeah.
So also recognize what you're good at, and it doesn't reduce you. But also set goals. Set goals for your personal life. And that's why your next best self is so important, because people come there and they're like, wow, so I can set goals for my personal life and my professional life. I've only thought about it professionally. So I'm like, so next year, in fact, people come for the conference to set goals for 2026. So I'm like, so for next year, as a wife, as a mom, as a sister, as a friend, who do you want to become? What does your next best self look like? Oh, I want to learn new cuisine. I want to learn how to do this. I want to learn some fun activities. Cycling was on my goals a couple of years ago, and I was like, let me learn how to cycle. So also we believe that you can't learn things, but I am of a different opinion. You can learn anything you put your mind to. You just need to have the interest. So life work integration is an unfolding journey. Different seasons, different requirements. Honor the season, build the systems, run away from Messiah complex, and the last thing, delegate tasks, not people.
Wow.
Delegate tasks, not people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, as we come to a close, I want you to look at that camera
Okay.
and speak to that woman who's watching this show, who wants to get to her next best self. What is that one piece of advice that you'd like to leave her with?
For you, the woman who wants to mean business, consider me as your big sister, your leadership catalyst, your coach, who is seeing you looking frazzled, stressed out, wondering whether it's worth it. I want to tell you it is worth it, but you've got to build the systems around where you're trying to go. I want to encourage you to invest school fees in yourself. Many times you think about school fees for other people. When is the last time you paid school fees for yourself? Pay school fees to grow yourself professionally and personally. And I guarantee you, if you do so, you will find that by the end of the next quarter, you'll be thinking differently. I hope that each of you will become your next best self by choosing to also audit who is around you. I think a lot of times we disregard the social audit. Who are you listening to? Who are you following? Who are you watching on that phone? Those are the people who may be killing the energy that is required for you to rise. So be mindful about who it is you're watching. I certainly hope you'll be watching us. But more importantly, do the social audit and decide what it is that you need to untie, what you need to tie, and what it is that you need to be intentional about so that you truly become your next best self.
Awesome. You've heard it from Patricia Muragami, the leadership catalyst. Invest school fees in yourself and get to your next best self. You have been watching She Means Business. I have been your host, Claire Munde. Until next time, have a good one.